thoughts, and so that we can keep our meeting on time. If time does run out as you are speaking, I will ask you to wrap up your remarks and conclude. If the guidelines are not followed, I will provide a warning and ask that decorum be restored. After that, ongoing failure to comply may result in removal from the hearing room. Our goal really is to conduct these proceedings as efficiently as possible while ensuring everyone the opportunity to observe and participate and to maintain decorum. I do want to start today also with a note about our committee chair, Senator Carlson. Senator Carlson has been my mentor and my partner for the past 3 years, and I've learned a lot being his vice chair. As many of you already know, Senator Carlson is undergoing treatment for pancreatic cancer. Since Senator Carlson may not know how he will react to his treatments that he'll be receiving throughout session, he has asked me in my role as vice chair to hold the gavel this session so that he can participate remotely if that is what is best for him, and so that we can plan for committee hearings without the variable as to who will be acting as chair for each of our meetings. I want to thank you again, Senator Carlson, for being such a wonderful mentor, and I'm sure I speak for our entire committee when I say that we do wish you the very best on your health journey and hope that you will be able to be with us as often as possible. So thank you so much for everything. And I do hope to carry on your tradition for our fair and orderly hearing. So thank you so much, Senator. And now I know, Senator, you would like to say a few words to our committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm honored to be able to have someone as capable as you take over this committee. This is something that I didn't plan on, and I'm just so happy that we have the right person in the position, and she will carry on with the best of abilities. And so I'm hoping that everybody gives her the respect and response that she deserves. And I will be here at times fully, but at times maybe not so fully, because I still have about 6 chemo treatments to go. So thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'm giving you the best support that possibly can be given. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Again, we wish you so well on your health journey. So now we are going to proceed to our business today. We do have 3 items on the agenda, and first up is our favorite senator, Senator Cwodzinski. Now you all know where you stand, just to be clear. I love all my children.
Madam Chair, can we have a roll call on that?
Ouch. I love all my children equally, just some more than others. Senator Cwodzinski will be presenting Senate File 1310 today, and I understand, Senator Cwodzinski, that your bill will be amending ballot language relating to school district referenda, and I understand that you have an amendment. Is that correct?
I have the thank you, Madam Chair. I have the A2 amendment.
Senator Cwodzinski moves the A2 author's amendment, and I assume, Senator, that's to get the bill in the form that you desire. Is that correct?
Correct. It changes the date to make it, because we introduced the bill last year, and so we need to change the date.
Great. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. And the author's amendment is adopted. Senator Cwodzinski, tell us about your bill.
Thank you, and thanks, members, for agreeing to the amendment. When I was still teaching many years ago, now and then, the community of Eden Prairie would have a school district referendum. And I'd put the referendum up on the overhead. Wow, there's a concept from the past. I'd put it up on the overhead on the screen, and and the language would say, by voting yes on this ballot question, you are voting for a property tax increase. And I would let the students process through that, until one of them raised their hand and would say something to the effect, well, where's the logic if you vote no? How come it's almost misleading? That it only says if you vote yes, your taxes will go up. And it doesn't say if you vote no, these would be the consequences. And all of a sudden, the students themselves, through none of my skills, they would just start discussing that it seems almost undemocratic, that it seems like it doesn't pass the smell test, that all of a sudden you're supposed to do your homework as a citizen, and all of a sudden you show up in the voting booth and you're being told what to think. And under no other voting box on the ballot, president, president, Senate, state house, anywhere else does it say voting for this person, this will happen, voting against this person, this will happen. But for some reason, way back when, the language for school districts and cities and local communities, they started saying if you vote yes, this will result in a tax increase. And so I've been thinking about that as I became a senator, about trying to change that language and either A, have the balance, and it would say, and if you vote no, this would happen. There'd be budget cuts to our schools may close, staff to kid ratios might change. Either A or B, just get rid of the vote yes on the ballots. And so I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and one of the things I've been thinking about is we in law say you can't campaign with 100 feet of the election booth, of the polling place. You got to stay 100. You can't wear a T-shirt into the polls that would say, wow, that's an irony. I'm sure you can't walk into the voting booth with a T-shirt that says, if you vote yes on this ballot question, your taxes will go up. I bet that's prohibitive. And maybe that's a question for legal people in the room, but it never dawned on me till right now. Anyways, I don't think it's fair. I think it's insulting to the voter by telling them what they should have done before they walked into the voting booth. And so that's my bill. I have 3 testifiers that are here to testify on the bill, and I look forward to your questions and comments as we move forward. This is not the final stop for this bill. I know there's other stops coming up, and so, but I'm looking forward to the debate and the discussion, and trying to remove this bias. Trying to change the voters' views or affect the voters' views in the booth that's supposed to be a sacred place away from politics. So anyways.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
So I will call up next Superintendent Christine Tucci Osorio. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. And then Sam Rosemark. So if you can get settled into your seat and then start off by please stating your name for the record, and you can go ahead and begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for having me here. Christine Tucci Osorio, the very proud superintendent of School District 622, North St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale.
Go ahead with your testimony.
Okay, I just wanted to speak up today because here in Minnesota, we really have a problem in inequitable funding. I know how complicated school finances are in general, but right now, because in Minnesota, we have quite a reliance on local property taxes to help fund public schools, as you know. And unfortunately, the amount of funding that we get per school district is really dependent on your zip code. A student's funding is largely tied to their zip code for a large variety of reasons. One of which is, as Senator Cwodzinski is bringing forward, the ballot language is incredibly complicated. And there's a lot of communication. So in my school district, we are 7 communities, 7 municipalities, and two different counties. There's a lot of information that our voters are going through. We're a very high poverty school district. I would say 68% of our students qualify for free and reduced price lunch. There's a lot of navigating that has to happen in order to make those proper decisions. We had a failed referendum this past fall. We went out for an operating levy increase as well as a capital projects levy. We don't even have a capital projects levy. And so many people called and said, well, I couldn't afford for my taxes to go up $1,000. And we were like, your taxes won't go up $1,000. The information is so complicated, and especially if you happen to have 2 questions on the ballot. To navigate that information, we put so much time and energy into communicating about all of our, the impact for the average homeowner. We calculate all that. We have tax calculators on our websites. We have incredible outreach. We have community meetings and Zoom meetings, and we go to churches and we talk in lots of different community settings. But as much as you think you're communicating exactly what the impact would be if you vote yes on this, there's huge misconception at the ballot. And so I can't say strongly enough how we need some sort of relief to either improve our communications, have some flexibility on how we word ballot language, and some greater ability to help people better understand what the average homeowner would actually be paying if this were to pass. And so I will turn it over to our Senator Cwodzinski, and we also have our brand new school board. Sam Rosemark here is with us as well from our school district this year. But there's a real confusion out there, and it was a really big issue that we had to navigate this year. And even after it failed, the number of people that were to say to me, I didn't understand that, over and over and over.
Thank you
wanna
so
add
much
to
for
that,
your
Sam?
testimony. Mr. Rosemark, go ahead and state your name for the record, and then go ahead with your testimony.
Yeah, hello, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Sam Rosemark. I serve on the school board for ISD 622 North St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale. I'm here with our amazing superintendent, Christine Tucci-Osorio, as well. And I'm here in support of this bill, Senate File 1310 as amended. Our ballot, as the superintendent shared, stated that the district would increase taxes and would revoke an existing authorization of $206 and replace it with a $1,152 per pupil amount, indexed to inflation. For many voters, they saw this language as very confusing and alarming. While door knocking out on the doors, while this ballot initiative was being proposed, many folks, many residents told me that they believed their property taxes were going to go up, that $1,000 amount, which simply wasn't true. Once I explained to them a little bit more about what the tax increase could be for them, which would be about, on average, 8% increase for the average $300,000 home, many residents understood it a lot more. And as was just shared, when talking with folks after the election, asking why it didn't pass and those sorts of things, a lot of folks also mentioned kind of that alarming facts and figures that really were very, in effect, very misleading to folks. So when voters are confused at the ballot box, even after they've done some of their research and they see this ballot language, they get confused, and the default then for them is just to vote no, which then harms our schools. It's been 10 years since our school district has passed a increase in our operating levy. We do not have a capital projects levy either. When adjusted for inflation, the state funding gap from 2003 levels still persists today. And that means districts are relying more and more on the operating levies that are voter approved. All of our surrounding school districts, for our school district in particular, have doubled the amount of operating voter approved levy dollars, which really puts us in a hard spot. So this bill does not remove transparency. Detailed tax impact notice and other information does go out to voters. What it does is remove ballot language that can unintentionally mislead voters. In a year with limited surplus resources that you have, this is a practical way to support school districts facing real financial challenges. So by ensuring voters clearly understand what they're voting on, you can help our district and many other districts as well. So I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rosemark. We have one testifier online, Kim McLaughlin, who is here from the Hibbing School Board on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair Westland and members of the Senate Elections Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I really echo what my counterparts from ISD 622 said. My name is Kim McLaughlin. I'm the treasurer of ISD 701 of the Hibbing School Board. I too am here today to support Senate File 1310 and really uplift the voices of public schools from across Minnesota. Voters deserve to understand how a voter-approved referendum impacts their pocketbooks. I too believe in transparency, and just as strongly I believe in accuracy, because I believe that transparency without accuracy can extremely mislead voters. So the current ballot requirement stating, by voting yes on this ballot question, you are voting for a property tax increase. It sounds real straightforward, but in practice, it oversimplifies something that is far more complex. In Hibbing, heading into the 25-26 school year, our district faced a $2.6 million shortfall, resulting in the elimination of 34 positions. So in an attempt to stabilize our budget, we brought 2 levy questions to the voters. One was an operating levy and one was a capital. Each had different impacts depending upon voters' property classification. We also had a levy that was falling off. So like ISD 622, we provided individualized tax calculators, we held meetings, and we provided the required notices to voters to make sure that they had accurate and personalized information. But when voters entered that booth, all of the nuances disappeared and it was replaced with that one generalized sentence. And so I too had many questions after the election where property owners contacted me. They thought they understood their personalized estimates, but that very blanket statement on the bottom of the ballot created uncertainty at that very moment when they cast their ballot. Both of our questions failed, and now our district faces another $2 million in budget cuts. So my testimony today is not about persuading anyone how to vote. It's about ensuring voters are not presented with information that is incomplete or overly broad when making that civic decision that affects the lives of young people. A one-size-fits-all sentence simply doesn't reflect how levies actually work in Minnesota. And I do not believe that Senate File 1310 removes transparency. Districts will still provide notices, individualized tax calculators, truth in taxation statements. But what this bill does, it removes a sentence that can unintentionally mischaracterize the real tax impacts for people. As a school board member, it's my responsibility to steward public trust, to ensure that voters have information that is complete, clear, and accurate. So in the long term, I believe the bigger solution is to fix our K-12 funding system so our districts don't have to go back and rely on repeated local referendums simply to maintain services. But until that work is done, I believe we owe Minnesotans ballots that reflect accurate information. And Senate File 1310 moves us in that direction. So I thank you today for your time and for your commitments to Minnesota students and communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And just to, I don't know, do people want a spoiler or not on the women's hockey game? Okay, great. So nobody needs to look at that for the rest of this hearing then. I was going to say the women's hockey team did win. Just saying. Okay, so thank you so much for your testimony. So we are going to open this up to member discussion. Did any members have any wish to offer any amendments to the bill presented to us at this time? Senator Matthews.
Madam Chair, I first have a question for the author, if I may, at this point.
Please.
Thank you. Madam Chair and Senator Cwodzinski, appreciate the discussion and the presentation of what you're identifying as the problem. My question is, and I found the online page where this particular school district laid out this information and showed the ballot example. And in my view, the information that was provided for the ballot question is not matching the language being stricken off of this bill. Why is that?
Senator
I have
Cwodzinski.
no idea what you're asking, Senator. I'm sorry. Can you rephrase it?
I'll
Thank
try
you.
again, Madam
Senator
Chair.
Matthews.
Please.
My point is, it doesn't read to me like the bill is addressing the problem that your testifiers were presenting.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
Senator
You can go from there.
Cwodzinski.
I think they did a great job of bringing up two issues. And one of them was the funding of our schools, which they were suggesting needs to get looked at because of the zip code argument that one of my testifiers made. Depending on where your zip code is, every child deserves the same amount of money spent on them because every child and just because of your zip code, the discrepancy between what some school districts provide each year for a child is pretty drastic between other school districts. So that's the one issue. The other issue is more what I'm trying to get at today. But all three of my testifiers also brought up the point that it's more complicated in that the difference in funding between school districts. But my bill, as I think I laid out, just literally, let's just get rid of that language and that's all it's trying to do, to create a ballot that's fair and unbiased and inherently punishing school districts with the message it sends. I hope that answered. I don't know, maybe it didn't, sorry.
Senator Matthews.
Madam Chair, thank you.
But ask again, Senator.
No, not quite. So I guess the question I'm trying to get at is, the problem presented is this longer sentence, and I'm reading it here, these dollar amounts, you have 206.83 and 1152.83 on the ballot question, but we're not striking that type of language in the bill. The bill is going at an underlying thing, which I don't even see on the sample ballot page on the website, that you want to remove telling people just across the board in all these school referendums that voting yes on a question has an impact of raising property taxes. And that reads to me as stepping away from transparency and then not even matching the problem being presented by the school district here. That's what I was asking you to respond to.
Yeah,
Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it okay for me to phone a friend?
You may phone a friend.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Rosemark.
Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senator Matthews, your question is a good question. I think what the senator is trying to solve is these weird facts and figures that get put in these bills, and maybe the language of the bill does need to be slightly further looked at. But essentially what he's getting at is, these per pupil dollar amounts that you see in the bill, the $206 amount is being then replaced with a $152 amount per pupil. We're talking about per pupil dollars, which just doesn't make sense to the average voter. They read that as a tax increase that they themselves are going to have to pay the full amount of. I think the spirit of what we're trying to do is make things more clear for the voter in terms of if or if not, their taxes will even increase. So.
Thank you, Mr. Rosemark. I think the bottom line is that there's a line there that says if you vote yes on this, you're voting to extend existing property taxes. And the mistake that I understand you saying is being made is your particular referendum mentioned an increase in per pupil amounts, and people were mistaking that in conjunction with this language that what that meant was their property taxes were going to go up by $1,000 rather than the per pupil amount was going up $1,000. And I think what I understand, Senator Cwodzinski, what you were saying is that this is sort of one-sided, that if we're going to have something that says by voting yes on the ballot question, you're voting to extend existing property tax, that we don't have the competing side of that, which is if you vote no, class sizes may go up, for example. Correct. And so my understanding of your bill, and you can tell me if I have this right, is that this is really just to remove this language so that people can rely on the information that they receive in advance of voting regarding the impact of the referendum. Do I have that right?
100%.
Any other, Senator?
I think I may have something later, but I'll let other members ask questions for now.
Any other, Senator Lucero, and then Senator Cran.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Cwodzinski, and perhaps to the testifiers. So I just understood, or I just listened to the answer there in the previous question, that there was the way that the ballot question was worded created confusion. Can you confirm that the ballot question itself, the specific verbiage then, was voted upon by the school board?
Mr. Rosemark or Ms. Tucci Osorio, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Committee Member Lucero, yes, it is voted on by the school board, but we are very much dictated by our legal guidance on what we can say on that ballot language. And I think what we're getting at is, even as we have many of these conversations with our community members, the door knocking and all these meetings, we even do a ballot explainer piece and everything. What happens is, you know, people go, oh, wait a minute, okay, so my own taxes aren't going up $1,000, you know, my taxes are gonna go up $28 or whatever, depending on the value of my home. And when they get to the ballot, they go, wait a minute, that doesn't look like what I remembered, because at the end of the day, the ballot language is what they're looking at when they're ready to vote. And I think one thing we can all agree on, and perhaps this bill needs some massaging through committee work, but the key issue is that what people are understanding, even before they go to the poll, even parents who are actively engaged, one of our mayors, because we have multiple mayors, came up to me and she said, oh my gosh, Christine, I got to the ballot box and I thought, this is never going to pass. That is really confusing. And she's someone who I had talked with many, many times about it. And she's an attorney, by the way. And it's very confusing because that per pupil amount versus, even if it were what the average homeowner or average taxpayer would pay, would be something different, right? But when it says, this is what Sam was getting at, is that this confusion when they get into the ballot box and they look at the ballot, it does not align with, they start to go, wait a minute, did I remember this right? Wait, I can't afford that. And it's just very confusing. Any kind of flexibility to be able to adjust ballot language to help it make a little more sense for what's my impact going to look like? Is anything is a step forward in that way.
Senator Lucero?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a quick follow-up then. So then, not familiar with the specific requirements of ballot language when it comes to school referenda, does the verbiage require, as was your scenario, does it require that specific reference to per pupil?
Yes.
And how much the increase is going to be, et cetera? Okay.
Yes.
So Madam Chair, I guess as I'm listening to this conversation, I think it's a good one. What's readily apparent, and you and I, Madam Chair, we're both on education finance together as well. So we're very familiar with the issues of the complexity of school funding, the formula, et cetera. It is overly complex. It is unnecessarily complex. The funding today, and Mr. Chair, we're also on the finance committee together as well.
As I recall, I sit to your right.
Yes, you sit to my right on both of those committees. That's right. It is unnecessarily complex, and what we have today is what I consider to be a vestige of policy and decisions that were made decades ago that have just continued to roll forward, and there hasn't really been the appetite to do a clean slate. Is what we're using today what we should still be using? But again, that's an entirely different conversation for a different committee. Where I'm concerned, though, as I'm listening to this dialogue is this looks like it's moving us in the direction of less transparency. I'm concerned about that, especially when it comes to voters. I don't want to have the excuse, well, voters are confused because it's a complex issue, so therefore we're going to remove things and make it less transparent, so when they get into the voting booth, they don't really have a full. If we are recognizing and admitting that it is complex and voters don't understand the full ramifications for or against, then we need to do a job to change the system, not to pull things off of the ballot. I guess that's the direction I'm going, and I would love to take the complexity away from these complex government systems. Thank you.
And I appreciate those.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm so sorry. I appreciate that comment and your commentary and your soliloquy. The problem I have with yes to everything. But the problem I have with the if you vote yes, your tax will go up is I think it tips the scales inherently biased against school districts. And if we can somehow, someday, maybe not sooner than later, to a bigger extent, do a better job of informing the voters so we don't have to inform the voter in the ballot booth where I think it's a little too late. Then I'm all on board for that.
Thank you. Senator Coran.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I agree with both Senator Lucero as well as Senator Matthews that simply removing the mandatory, it increases your taxes, clearly doesn't solve this problem, right? As described by both testifiers, that the dollar amount that's mandated in the language mandated certainly is what you described as the greatest impact, right? I would argue the other impact is the cost of government, regardless of what you try to do. Your job is to try and prove great value, right, to every citizen that goes there. And when they truly have that trust and they believe they're getting great value for their dollars, right, because many levies pass with that language and have done for many years. And so it goes to the level of trust. And I think the one piece you don't control is the total cost of government, right? And our citizens don't make any delineation of government, right, between schools, cities, counties, right, townships, state or federal, or the cost of living piles on. I think we have got a few members of the education finance probably would be a great conversation to really figure out how is the language, the mandatory language on the levy question. One, it needs to, your per pupil should be there, but what are the other ancillary pieces that we can add to it without complicating it to actually make it clear and concise about its impact? You're never going to be able to describe property taxes, across the board, but I don't think the solution is to just remove the question or the clear statement, the simplistic one that your taxes are going up, and it's your job to educate, and we got to help you figure out how to get a statement on the ballot that educates them or doesn't, or that is just more accurately reflects the changes in which it makes, or which the yes or no vote executes. But so I think this is one where it should stay and probably be pushed into the education finance to actually do some work outside of the bill at hand.
Thank you, Senator Coran. And just to clarify too, the next step for this bill is actually education policy, because it technically, this bill itself does not actually deal with finance. Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski, for bringing this bill. I think this is a good conversation to have. It strikes me that I cannot think of any other instance where a ballot is where people get information about what is on the ballot. A ballot is, you get it and I'm going to vote for this person, I'm going to vote for this person, I'm going to vote yes or no for this thing. It is a place for you to just vote, not a place where people generally go to get information about the things they are voting on. There's many other places to do that, which are the appropriate places. It also strikes me that there are many consequences that could happen if you vote yes or no on this issue, on a school referendum. So it's interesting to me that just one of them, if you vote this way, this one thing is named, where there could be probably a dozen things listed, potential consequences, whether you vote yes or whether you vote no. And so I'm not advocating for adding all of those things, but I think it is the right thing to have the ballot remain just a place where you vote, not where you're getting some of the information, where that information can be found elsewhere. So thank you for bringing this.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I thought of a way to ask a clarifying question a lot shorter than I did before. So to Senator Cwodzinski, or maybe to either of the two testifiers too, if this had been law a year ago and was the applicable law for your levy question last year, would the $206 number and the $1152 number still have been printed on the ballots distributed to voters?
Who would like to take that?
I can respond to
Go
that
ahead,
one.
Ms. Tucci-Osorio.
Madam Chair.
Just for the record, we want to make sure we know who's speaking. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Madam Chair. And to your question, Senator Matthews, I think part of what we're talking about right now is I'm not quite clear, quite frankly, to the answer to that. What I will tell you is Because with regard to taking away, this will be a cost increase. If you don't say, there's no doubt you have to list what you're asking for legitimately in those numbers. I think that, and this is where I think we do have a little bit of work to workshop this, but I know that when it comes down to what those dollar amount, those numbers are, whether it could be per pupil, or even if it were to change to per average homeowner or taxpayer, that would be exponentially different for us. Even if it was, I think you're right, there's a whole lot of work to do to kind of restart. As Senator Lucero said, we have a lot of work to do to kind of reflip it. If you want some interesting reading, 5 years ago, I co-chaired the State School Finance Task Force, and we put together an 85-page document, fun reading for bedtime. But it is really, there's so many things that we need to untangle if we really want to fix this. But a key issue that with regard to whether or not it would have changed our outcome, here's a piece of data for you. And many of you have worked with Morris Leatherman, does a lot of those surveys, to test market questions and gather input around the state. I'm sure you've seen many of those types of reports. Almost every single metrics, according to our research study done with Morris Leatherman, Peter Leatherman said the approval level of our school district by every demographic group, including empty nesters, senior citizens, every single demographic group was incredibly high. The trust in our financial management of our school district, incredibly high in every single group. All of the factors that test the waters ahead of a referendum to see if this is really viable in our community were very high, surprisingly so. In fact, Peter Leatherman even said to me about 5 months before our election, if this does not pass, it will be due to factors outside of your control, because your community has a very high level of trust in the leadership of the school district and your fiscal management, which doesn't always happen in school districts. We put a lot of time and energy in that. So, but what we've heard after the fact was people got to the ballot and really were confused about that amount. We weren't able to say what your cost is, what you're voting to pay more for, but we were asked what the per pupil amount would be. And if you don't know how many students you have and what the tax base looks like, how do you know how that impacts you as a taxpayer? Even a percentage of an increase would be different. But I think that's part of the ballot confusion. And I understand that that doesn't quite answer your question either, because the language in this bill is getting at taking away that information. I'm just saying that even if you didn't say this is a tax increase, even if we could word it differently, would be a step in the right direction, for sure.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, didn't answer my question. And this goes again, the problem being presented is language with the ballot question, but the solution being provided is to strike things for the ballot notice, which comes after at the bottom, after the yes-no options are presented. And that's my issue. I think, and this is distinct from every other election, because people know I'm checking the name and that's the person who's going to have the office. That's what usually voting is. This is unique because it is directly the referendum that has the impact of raising taxes on the community. And that's why that got put into place to begin with. And that's why it's still succinct from president, governor, congressman, every other race that's on the ballot. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to offer the A4 amendment at this time, and we'll wait to have that get passed out.
So as the amendment is being handed out, one question I would have is, Senator Matthews, did you share this previously with Senator Cwodzinski?
Madam Chair, no, I know that that's the usual answer that we get. We had pretty short notice for these bills coming up, and so I just had short amount of time to think about what I wanted to do in response to it. And this had to come together pretty quickly before the hearing.
Okay. So the answer then is It's okay, I'm just asking, you haven't discussed this with the senator prior?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And Senator Cwodzinski, have you had an opportunity to review the amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Senator
I'd like to
Matthews.
speak to it if I may, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I will, just one second. Yeah, and you've had a chance, and you understand the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, Senator Matthews, to your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have a ballot question that's ahead of the yes/no voting spots on the ballot. And then we have the notice, which comes after the yes/no. And so the presentation is all about, I think we need to change the ballot question. But the bill is presenting an option of changing the ballot notice about the property tax increase at the bottom. And so if we're going to amend that, I think to go with where Senator Cwodzinski started off his discussion, I think more transparency would be a better thing to do than less transparency, which just indicates a yes vote is raising property taxes, a no vote either holds or reduces, depending on whether it's a new referendum or renewing an existing referendum. And my purpose on this, and this is not to go down all the, well, here's all the things it's used for, because that's not even presented under the status quo of the current thing. This is just a straight up, here's what yes means, here's what no means, and that way we'll have equal and greater transparency and can also help residents make affordability decisions that they need to for their household and their communities as this goes along. So I'd urge support for my amendment.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Matthews, how will voting no result in a reduction in property taxes?
Senator Matthews.
Madam Chair and Senator Cwodzinski, because as I read through the bill, where you are, the only places that are striking the by voting yes statements are for the renewals of existing property, you're crossing out, you're voting to renew an existing capital projects referendum that is scheduled to expire. So a no vote then means that would expire and therefore no longer be charged to the residents. So that's where it matches up to the sections in your bill where you're looking to strike that language.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Senator Cwodzinski, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna ask members to vote no at this point on this amendment until I can further process it, and maybe you and I can talk further if you care to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Matthews.
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask for a roll call on the amendment.
All right. Any other discussion on the amendment?
Chair
Oh,
Westland?
I'm sorry, Ms. McLaughlin, go ahead.
That's okay. I would just like to add, I don't think it's as simple as a yes or no, because the other thing that folks haven't discussed in detail here today, there's also differences based on the classification of property and whether or not an operating levy or a capital levy affects all property classifications. So even though you have a yes and a no, as the amendment suggests, that may not in fact be true either, because I may be a voter that has, for example, a seasonal rec property that's exempt from an operating levy. So I think that as we're considering language to be both transparent and accurate, we would need to think about the property classifications as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Tucci, oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow up what my colleague said online, to answer your question, when our referendum questions, both of them failed this year, it did not result in a decrease in anybody's taxes. It simply resulted in not increasing their taxes. So it does depend. If it's something that's up for renewal versus something that's an additional, if it's added cost, every ballot question is slightly different. Not every time does voting no mean that you're gonna your taxes are gonna go down. And sometimes voting yes doesn't mean your taxes are going to go up. If it's a renewal, it would mean in some cases that you're continuing to pay what you're already paying just because you're renewing it. And so I think that's part of what the challenge would be, is understanding that it's not always one or the other.
Thank you. All right, we have a roll call requested. Ms. Stankiewicz is going to take the roll.
Senator Westland,
No.
Senator Curran,
Yes.
Senator Carlson.
No.
Senator Barr,
Aye.
Senator Boldon,
No.
Senator Cwodzinski,
No.
Senator Limmer,
Yes.
Senator Lucero,
Yes.
Senator Marty,
No.
Senator Matthews,
Yes.
Senator Port.
Thank you. There being 6 ayes and 7 nays, the motion does not prevail. All right, and I understand, Senator Barr, you would like to make some comments. Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Quick question procedurally. This is going to ed policy next, right? And where you could address some of the other questions in here, like the per pupil piece that's mentioned on the ballot, that will be addressed there. Could we have this bill come back here after they address that? Because I think a lot of this should be done after that. And the reason I say that is the per pupil part. I mean, Ms. McLaughlin online kind of mentioned we have different property classes. That gets a little confusing. Your per pupil piece gets confusing. So if you can remove all of the per pupil piece and put the ballot question, have enough latitude with your ballot question to say, voting yes on this referendum will increase your property taxes by $13 per 100,000 assessed value, or $10, or something like that, because everybody's property has a different value. So you can't say it's going to it'll raise my property taxes, but maybe it raises it $3. You know, it could be something very small, or $10 a year. And then some of the other things that we have going on, it could raise my property taxes $100 or $200 a year. I have seen some really interesting ones where $500 or $600 a year in your property tax increase simply on a school referendum. That is not a $10 or $15 increase, and voters are going to react totally different by the amount that they're going to have to actually pay. And this is a simple yes or no, but we also need to address the language in the per pupil part, which that means nothing to a homeowner, absolutely nothing. So, Madam Chair, I would really like it if we could see, if they could have an opportunity in ed policy to fix that part and then come back here for the final language on what actually goes on the ballot, if we could.
Senator Barr, I think that's a possibility, and I believe Senator Cwodzinski is the chair of that committee, so perhaps I can have a conversation about him as to whether it's appropriate to come back.
We'll talk.
Madam Chair, I guess we'll talk. Would it be all right if we just, I don't know how we would actually do that. We can't actually just table this. Could we move it to ed policy and bring it back, or we vote on it and vote on it with no recommendation and then send it to ed policy to come back afterwards? Because ed policy really needs to do the work first, I believe.
Well, and again, I think, Senator Barr, there are 2 different questions, and I think they're getting conflated a little bit.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And the one question is a little more complicated than the one that I believe Senator Cwodzinski is going to. There is the separate question that is the more complicated question that you're talking about, which actually may be an finance question. Okay. But this is a policy-related question. So I think today we're going to vote on the bill and we're going to send it to ed policy. However, perhaps Senator Cwodzinski, who is on this committee, can let us know sort of what happens in his committee and whether it's appropriate or not for it to come back here. I'm not necessarily opposed to that happening. I just don't know if it's necessary for this particular limited issue. Oh.
Okay, with that being said, you'll let me know. I know, I trust you, you'll let us know on this, but I've kind of made my comments. It would be nice if what we put on the ballot, and I don't even know if it needs to come here after you fix that in ed policy and ed finance, but it would be nice if what is put on the ballot actually represents what the voters are voting on. A vote for yes will be $13 per 100,000 increase, or $1,000 per 100,000, or vote no will leave your property taxes the same, or it will expire and your property taxes will drop, whatever the actual right language is, so many dollars per $100,000 of assessed value so people can actually look at it and say, I know what I'm voting on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And just very quickly, and I'll come to you, Senator Lucero, just to correct the roll call vote. Karan, Barr, Limmer, Lucero, and Matthews voted aye, which was 5 votes, and it got reported as 6, so I just want to correct that. And then Westland, Carlson, Boldon, Cwodzinski, Marty, and Port voted no, which was 6 votes. So I just want to correct that the roll call was 5-6. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then just to finish up that previous discussion, let me add one more layer of complexity. So we heard the testifier mention seasonal recreational, and we heard Senator Barr just refer to different impacts. So you have, I think, 3 types of people that are voting or not voting on a ballot. You'll have those that are going to be impacted, for example, residential homestead. You have those that will be voting who may not be impacted, those who are seasonal recreational, potentially. And then you have a third, you have commercial industrial property who can't vote but are impacted. So you have those that can vote who will be impacted, those who are voting that won't be impacted, I think, and then those who are not voting who will be impacted. Just to repeat that a second time. I have always had a concern about people who are getting taxed without representation. If they own commercial industrial property, or which can include business property like apartments, right? It raises the property taxes and those costs just get passed on. And so anyway, that's another, I'm not done yet though, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thanks, Senator
I
Lucero.
was inspired by Senator Cwodzinski
Wow.
Make a note.
of not wanting to tip the scale. But then I was further inspired by Senator Boldon, who said that we don't have anything else on the ballot that provides information. And unfortunately, just a friendly correction, that is wrong. Judges have the incumbent by them, which is information on the ballot, and it does tip the scale. So in this spirit of what's happening here in this bill, and again, inspired by Senator Boldon and Senator Cwodzinski's desire to not tip the scale on the ballot, I'm going to offer the A5 amendment.
Senator offers the A5 amendment. And I have a bill for you about judicial elections.
Well, Madam Chair, while we're passing this
Senator
out,
Cwodzinski.
I have a comment for Senator Lucero. And
Certainly.
Your comment about no taxation without representation rings true, and I hope you'll work with me on lowering the voting age to 16, so when they're taxed on their incomes and their gas and their sales, things they buy, and yet they don't have the right to vote, maybe we should lower the voting age to 16 someday. But anyways, for another day.
Okay, we're not going there, but thank you. Yep. Senator Port, the A5 amendment is being passed out. Actually, we need to get to her after we deal with the amendment. So, Senator Lucero, have you
Thank
had an
you.
opportunity to share this with Senator Cwodzinski? And I'm assuming the answer is no.
So I will explain the bill or the
Okay.
amendment. So, and to your point, Senator Cwodzinski, if you want to co-author a bill to repeal the sales tax and the income tax, I'm all for it. What this bill will do, or this amendment would remove the incumbent from the judges, from the judicial elections on the ballot. So it is no longer tipping the scale when there are judicial elections, that it's an even playing field. That's all this does. Removing that little I think it might be in parentheses or it's not at the end of the judge's name, who's currently the incumbent. And with that, I would ask for a roll call.
Thank you, Senator Lucero. So as a lawyer, and there's some other lawyers here who will tell you that probably the thing that voters know the least about are judges. No question. Everybody always asks, what do you know about these judges and who should I vote for? As I said, I have a bill for you about certainly appellate and Supreme Court level judges. And so I probably will not be voting for this, but I would love to share my ideas with you about how we actually retain or not retain appellate level and Supreme Court judges. So any discussion on this bill? Senator Cwodzinski, what's your?
At this point, I would urge members to vote no. I think Senator Boldon eloquently expressed better than I could and can the intent of my original bill. And it's just, as she so, you don't need to hear it again. But thank you for how eloquent you were. And that was the intent of this bill. And as Senator Westland so eloquently expressed, we're not confused. We're
Conflate.
Thank you. Two different issues, and one sounds like a lot of you should be on ed finance because that's where that part of the conversation should take place. But my intent literally belongs in elections. With my language of just simply removing, if you vote yes, your taxes will go up, and it's insulting to the voter, and that was my intent. But I appreciate your liveliness today. I hope you keep that for the next 3 months.
Senator Port, I know you've had your hand up, and were you speaking to the main bill, or were you speaking to the amendment?
To the main bill, please, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll put you in the loop for that. Senator Boldon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm probably going to vote no on this amendment, but I think it's a conversation that we should have, and adding it, sort of on the fly here onto this bill, which is sort of a separate issue, I think is not maybe the right way to go about this, but I do think it's a conversation to have, and so maybe just this isn't the right place or time or bill to add it on to, so I'll just add that.
Any further discussion? All right. Ms. Stankiewicz will take the roll on the A5 amendment.
Senator Westland?
No.
Senator Curran?
Yes.
Senator Carlson?
No.
Senator Barr?
Aye.
Senator Boldon?
No.
Senator Cwodzinski?
No.
Senator Limmer?
No.
Senator Lucero?
Yes.
Senator Marty?
No.
Senator Matthews?
Yes.
Senator Port?
No.
All right. There being 4 ayes and 7 nays, the motion does not prevail. Okay. I believe Senator Port has been very patiently waiting. Senator Port, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Cwodzinski, I just want to say thank you for bringing this bill forward. This has long confused me, why we put this on the ballot, this particular sentence, because yes, of course, when you vote for a levy, it will increase taxes or keep taxes the same if it's a renewal, potentially. But also lots of other things go into deciding what our taxes are. And so whether other rises in taxes or decreases in taxes are happening at the same time, that's not taken into account. I also think when we think about the impacts of our votes, they go far beyond what we pay in taxes. When I think of the school levy in my kids' school right now, it was to lower class sizes. But that's not on the ballot. And that's a huge piece of information that I think, matters to our community. Is this increasing class sizes? Is it decreasing class sizes? There's so much information that can change. There's so many policy decisions that can change based on how we vote on all sorts of different things on our ballot. So I agree, Senator Cwodzinski. I think this is a tiny piece of information that is not the whole picture, that can really sway how people feel about supporting something. And I appreciate that you are trying to correct this one piece. And I support the bill and really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you, Senator Port. Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to request a roll call.
Thank you. Roll call is requested. Any other conversation on the bill? All right. So the motion before us is Senator Cwodzinski is moving Senate File 1310 as amended and be recommended to pass and referred to Education Committee. Ms. Stankiewicz will take the roll.
Senator Westland,
Yes.
Senator Coran,
No.
Senator Carlson,
Yes.
Senator Barr,
No.
Senator Boldon,
Yes.
Senator Cwodzinski,
Yep.
Senator Limmer,
No.
Senator Lucero,
No.
Senator Marty,
Aye.
Senator Matthews,
No.
Senator Port.
Yes.
Thank you. There being 6 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is recommended to pass and is re-referred to the Education Policy Committee. All right. The next item on our...
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski. Education finance is complicated. As another member of the committee, I can swear that that's true. Okay, and we are next going to hear Senate File 3627, Senator Boldon. Once you get settled in there, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, you are likely aware of the statute that talks about allowing candidates, those running for office, that they have to be allowed into apartments, dormitories, nursing homes, manufactured home parks, other multiple unit facilities used as a residence. That allows for the people who live in those residences to have the same access to those asking for their vote as people who live in single-family homes. I realized over the interim, I was going to hold a listening session in my district with my official hat, an official, as an elected official for the district. I wasn't campaigning, I was doing it in my official lane. And it was around, geared at those who were renting. And so I wanted to go to apartment buildings to invite people to this listening session, and then realized that there was nothing that would require my allowance into those apartment buildings. And so this bill would simply add to the previous statute that allows and requires candidates to be allowed into these settings, that also elected officials would be allowed into those buildings.
Thank you, Senator Boldon. And just so everyone knows, this bill will be laid over. So we would like to open this up for member discussion. Senator Matthews, you just looked like you really wanted to say something, so go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question, Senator Boldon. So in your scenario, did you ask and were told no, or you didn't even get to the point of asking?
I tried.
Bolden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was one instance where I was asked and was given quite a bit of pushback. Yes, there was.
Any further questions? Senator Coran?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Boldon, definition of elected officials?
Senator Boldon?
Thank
Oh,
you.
is in there? Okay, all right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it is defined.
All right. So it is everybody. I have challenges with them. People want to be, right, no solicitation, right? We see more and more on every single house, and I think those shared environments, we took care of the actual campaigning piece of that, and we all share those challenges, but many homeowners are putting non-solicitation up there as well. And I think many want their privacy, and we have to figure out how to get there, but that's why we have mail, and we have a variety of other ways to communicate. So I'm not sure we just grant that elected officials have some superior means to be in there and walk and solicit for any purpose, essentially, where the business can't do it or anybody else, the private citizen can't do it either.
Thank you, Senator Cran. I would say, however, this isn't soliciting. I know that that's probably what a lot of people mean when they put that no soliciting on their door, but canvassing or an elected official coming to the door isn't soliciting. Senator Cran.
In this particular case, Madam Chair, is it, if it's, well, I want to come in, I just want to provide notice. There's lots of different ways to provide notice. Isn't that solicitation?
Well, as an elected official, don't I have the obligation to have communications with my constituents?
I agree.
All right.
And we have mail and many other different ways to do so.
Senator Boldon?
Madam Chair, yeah, I would just say that, there may be people who live in apartments that don't wish to talk to their elected officials, and they can, not answer the door or answer the door and say they don't want to, just the same as anyone else can. But there also are people who live in apartment buildings who do want access to their elected officials, and they shouldn't not have that just because they live in an apartment building.
Thank you, Senator Boldon. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Boldon, this is the first I've seen of the bill, so I'm trying to catch up to it. I can understand why a candidate and their campaign workers would want to enter a multi-unit housing development in order to promote their candidacy. Whenever I have a town hall meeting, I usually have to rent a space or at least bring it to a public space like a city hall to have that. Sometimes I have to pay for that rent space, sometimes I don't. Especially in the use of a public building. Now we're creating a little bit of an incursion into getting closer to someone's home, common space that they pay for. And does this mean that they cannot say no to keeping an elected official or their staff out of a building for the purposes of non-campaign purposes? Is that how I am to interpret this bill?
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Limmer, I'm not sure that I understand your question. I'm going to try to answer it, and if I don't get there, let me know. I also just want to clarify that I wasn't holding a listening session in an apartment building. I wasn't using any common space. I was knocking on doors to talk to people, similarly as we do as candidates. It's just that I wasn't campaigning. I wasn't there in a campaign capacity. I was there as an elected official, or wanted to be there as an elected official. And so to your question, I think of, does this mean that those who manage apartment buildings can't say no? Yes, to some degree, with the parameters, just the same as is the current law for those who are campaigning.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair, in the event that, does this mean that this bill, if passed, would allow a candidate, instead of going door to door, to set up a listening session in a common space, a dining room, or somewhere else in the building, and invite the residents of that building to that particular meeting?
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, Senator Limmer, this bill doesn't speak to that. It simply allows for access into the building under the parameters. And to Senator Coran, to your earlier remark about the intention of or what they're doing there, it has to be related to official business, official work of the official allows them to be there to talk to their constituents.
Madam Chair.
Senator Limmer.
I certainly could understand this if, let's say, the candidate wanted some information on an HOA bill that was going through the legislature and wanted to know what the opinion of the rent or condo owners would be in HOA development. If it was on a non-related, non-residential issue, I would, well, I'm a little cautious on it because I could see how it could get out of hand. If there was a little bit more parameter established on the bill, I think I could support it, perhaps limiting visitation to separate doors, rather than it doesn't put any parameters on it. We're not only asking to come in, we as a state are saying, you will let us in so we can knock on every door. But it doesn't restrain it just to that practice. You could actually set up a table in the foyer
Well, Senator Limmer, that actually isn't accurate. There are parameters set up around this, and it is in the statute. If you look at 2.3 to 2.8, it does have parameters about what can be done. And all this is doing is placing people in an apartment building in the same standing as a person in a house, which means that the apartment manager cannot decide who gets to talk to their residents, right? So let's say you're knocking on a particular apartment door and the apartment manager decides they don't like you. They're deciding for the residents whether or not, as their senator, they get to hear from you or not. And so this simply says that they have to allow you access. You're allowed to knock on doors and leave materials. And so there are parameters. There's nothing in this language that allows you to set up shop in their lobby.
Madam Chair,
Senator Limmer.
I'd be more comfortable if there was a cross-reference to the restraint in 2.3 and 2.8 as an amendment to this particular bill. That would recognize the existing limitations. That would be parallel with the candidate visiting, as in this case.
I guess I'm confused because I'm reading 2.3 to 2.8, and it does say an elected official or candidate and any accompanying staff or volunteers, and then it goes on, are permitted to knock and leave materials.
Madam Chair, I don't see 2.3 or 2.8 anywhere in the bill. Maybe you could point that out to me. Is it? I'm getting my legislative aide assisting me here. Okay.
Well, Senator Limmer was a mentor of mine for many years, so I don't take that as a negative.
Senator Limmer?
Madam Chair,
Did that answer your query?
my confusion has been alleviated.
Excellent.
You were referring to a page and line, and I was thinking it was a statute that you were referring to.
Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Boldon, I really appreciate you bringing this bill. I like to knock doors. It's one of my favorite parts of politicking, I guess, is hearing from my community. And I knock doors in the off years just to hear from my community, connect with my community, find out what's important to them, ask some questions about things that we're working on. And I really appreciate how this lifts up the fact that, members of our community who live in rental properties, who live in multifamily properties, have the same right of access to us, and that a manager of the building should not be able to decide for them who they hear from. And I think it makes a lot of sense to include elected officials in the same way that we include candidates. I hope that this change encourages more elected officials to reach out to their communities, not just when we're asking for their vote, but also as we are doing our official side work. So appreciate this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Lucero?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And question for the author on line, that same section we were just referring to, line 2.5. It says, and to leave materials related to the official work of the elected official. So my question is, do you have a definition for what official work is?
Senator Boldon?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and for the question. I perhaps would defer to council if there is a relevant definition for that, but I think in common sense terms, we can imagine there's, work that you are doing as an elected. we all sort of think about that as we are doing work as an elected official, of what, you know, what is related to our jobs here in St. Paul and in our districts versus what is not. I think there's like a common sense definition of that. I will defer to council if there's an official definition to that.
I mean, I could imagine that would be an end of session report. If you're inviting people to a town hall, it could be a piece of material to a town hall to discuss that. But I don't, Ms. Stengel, is there anything that you can help us with?
Madam Chair, Senator Boldon, there is no defined, this term is not defined in statute.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, here's where I was going. That's pretty ambiguous. You know, there's the phrase, what one person's trash is another man's treasure. And so I see two things happening here. When we're wearing the hat of a candidate and we're door knocking, we are there soliciting ourselves, our ideas, our values, our priorities, and seeking their support. When you now are going in as, you're not campaigning as you've expressed, you are going in as an elected official and incumbent currently holding office, and you want to leave materials related to official work, that to me could be abused as now you are pushing, not you, but the person is pushing stuff that they themselves are advocating for and are going to say, you know, it could be something controversial. This is what I want to do, and so I'm going to force this upon you, and I'm going to call it official work, and I'm going to leave these materials. That's way different than me trying to sell myself to gain your support. You are now allowing access into these private spaces so that I can leave something under the very ambiguous umbrella of official work. And as we know, in any of our districts, we have multiple perspectives and viewpoints. And I'm concerned about us now being the government forcing people access into these private spaces and then claiming official work to push things that the residents may not be interested in hearing. So I have a concern with that, hence the question why I was asking for official work. Thank you.
Senator Boldon.
Madam Chair, I guess what I would say to that is what you're describing, I don't see as very different as what may happen when someone is campaigning. You are there to talk about what you want to do, and you may be pushing something to someone who, you know, doesn't agree or doesn't want to hear it. I don't necessarily see the difference.
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, that didn't sound like you, Senator Lucero.
Thank you.
Hearing voices.
The big difference is in a campaign season as in a candidate leading up to an election, I'm seeking to gain a constituent support. As an elected official who might be the chief author or supporter of legislation that could be not controversial but could be controversial, I'm there now in my authoritative capacity trying to push something onto them rather than trying to get their support. I'm now using my hat as an elected official to advocate for a bill or legislation that I personally support. And I think that's an abuse, or could be a potential abuse. And I hope you can see the difference. One, trying to push for something what an elected official in their authority may support versus me being there as a candidate trying to get their support. Very big difference.
Senator Lucero, I guess I'll go to Senator Cwodzinski here in a minute, but if I'm carrying a bill, I'm the one who's going to be voting on it, not the constituent. Maybe I'm informing them of the work that I'm doing. I guess, so I'm sorry, I don't understand you, but maybe we can talk about it later. But Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing this up, and and I have to disagree with my colleague to my left. In that I don't think when we go into buildings we're necessarily pushing an agenda. We're there to listen, and that's part of our job as elected officials, is to hear our constituents and to listen to their listen to them and gain the information that make us better elected officials. And I know in my case the two examples when you go to a building, apartment building, that's, the demographics are generally 20-somethings. And many of them recently have moved to my district. And this is where they've chose to live, is in this building that's predominantly young people. And to go in there and just say, what's on your mind, is a useful thing, A, welcoming them to the democratic process as who is their state senator or their elected official, and B, just listening to them, you know, and make them feel welcome to the community in your district. And the other anecdote for me is going into nursing homes when they just don't, you're going in totally to listen to what's going on in their mind, because that's a demographic that maybe isn't listened to as often as they should be and can be. And so when you go in, they're so grateful and appreciative that an elected official showed up at their door, because they want to meet with you. They want to see who their state senator is or their elected official. And the other thing I'd like to just add, I forgot, but might come back to me, but it was something that was said by the Madam Chair. Anyways, thank you for bringing this up, because I think as part of our responsibilities to listen to our constituents, and what better way than to show up at their door. And and the list of things that you brought up as in, you know, as our newsletter would also fall under that umbrella. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. This bill is going to be laid over. Senator Boldon, any final remarks?
I appreciate the conversation. I will just sort of reiterate that this is, you know, we have already decided that this is important for candidates to have this ability, for residents of these facilities, areas, to have access to them. It only makes sense to me that then once people are elected and representing them, that they should still have access to them at that point as well. And as Senator Westland said so well, this really also just puts people who live in apartments and the like on the same ground and footing as people who live in single-family homes. And so people who live in apartments should also have access to their elected officials. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. The bill is laid over for possible inclusion in an omnibus bill. We are going to move on to the next and final item on our agenda, the confirmation hearing for Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board appointees, Mr. Asp, Mr. Banaian, and Mr. Spevacek. So if I understand that Mr. Banaian is online, we will have Mr. Sigurdsson, Mr. Asp, and Mr. Spevacek come to the table. Mr. Sigurdsson, once you are settled in there, go ahead and say your name for the record and go ahead and make your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jeff Sigurdsson. I'm the Executive Director of the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board. I'm just going to quickly review the role of board members. As I'm sure you know what the board does, but the board has 6 members. The confirmation is one of the few that go before both the House and the Senate, come before this committee, of course, for initial approval, and then go for the full floor for a vote of at least 3/5 of the members for confirmation. Typically, an appointment is for 4 years, although if they're filling a vacancy, it may be shorter, as you will see with some of these members. No more than 3 members may represent any party. And that's important in this case because the 3 members before you today are all associated with the Republican Party. So it's important for us to regain our bipartisan balance, and that's extremely important for the board going forward. Not to mention the fact that we have to have 4 votes to approve any action, and without the additional board members, the board will not be able to take any actions going forward. 2 members must be former legislators. That is a role for that former Representative Banaian is filling for the Republican Party. And then there's 2 members that must not have been a public official or held elected partisan office for 3 years prior to appointment. And then 2 other members, which are called unlimited, which just means that they must be of different political parties, but there's no limitations on their prior activities. They can't be a lobbyist or an officer of a political party or a candidate for a partisan office while they serve on the board. And then just briefly, I want to emphasize how much work, frankly, board members have in front of them. At the last February board meeting, The packets that staff developed for board members to go through for the executive session was a little over 350 pages. The regular session was about 60 pages, and we provide that 1 week ahead of the meeting. So there's a lot of material that the board members have to be willing to set aside time and effort to become familiar with. They are, of course, looking at investigations that are initially carried out by staff, but are directed by the board. If additional information or subjects that are of interest to them, then we supplement our work and make sure that they are satisfied that they have all the information needed to come to the conclusion of an investigation. They hear testimony provided and information provided by anyone who is before the board. They review and approve advisory opinions where the board tries to provide more general information that the entire regulated community can look towards. They are involved in administrative rules, and we also then receive, we being the staff, come to the board for direction on things like the use of the budget and other areas that we should be looking at towards providing better disclosure, educational outreach, et cetera, for the regulated community. In short, they're vital. The appointments by the governor, I know, are taken very seriously, and I believe you'll see that these three individuals have very high qualifications to bring to the board. Very quickly, just to introduce them, and then I will step aside. We have the current chair of the board, David Asp. He is being reappointed for a term ending in January of 2030. Typically, board chairs are elected by the other board members for a term of 1 year. We have Vice Chair King Banaian. As I mentioned, he's a former Republican representative. His term ends in January of 2028. We have Charles Spevacek, who's appointed just this very month for a term ending in January of 2029. And again, all three individuals identify with the Republican Party. I will point out also that when this goes to, if the committee moves forward with these appointments, they'll go to the full floor where they'll join Steve Swanson, who passed this committee last year, but a full vote of the Senate was not taken on his confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sigurdsson. And I'd love to give each of our nominees here today, or appointees, an opportunity to speak to us. And we'll start with Mr. Asp. Anything that you'd like to share with the committee? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Westland, and thank you for having us at the committee. It's been a privilege to serve on the board the last 4 years, to serve as chair in 2024 to 25, and if confirmed, I'll be chair again this year in 26. And so I'll just mention a couple of things about the board. My background is I'm an attorney. I'm a lawyer at the law firm Lockridge, Grindle, Nauen, for my day job, but this is something that I do as a matter of community service to really work on the important issues that come before the board. And there's a couple of things that I've really enjoyed working on. One is providing information to people who are struggling to comply with campaign finance laws that aren't always clear. And one of the important functions the board does is public information. And I'm really happy with how open the board has been about trying to provide information to people who are trying to comply. Often they're volunteers, often they're doing this in addition to something else that's very busy. And so we generally make information accessible. I know it's common for people associated with campaigns or committees to call board staff, and they're open to those calls and providing informal guidance. And so we as board members look to anything that we can do to make that process easier, because we understand that people are just trying to comply with the rules. That also goes into our philosophies on the enforcement mechanisms of the board. As I'm sure many of you have seen or experienced, sometimes there are complaints brought against campaigns or committees, parties. Oftentimes the complaints are sort of someone just was doing their best to comply and just ran afoul of the law. And in those cases, I've seen if the board has exercised its discretion to reduce fines or not require fines. Again, trying to encourage people to engage in the political process because we know it's not always easy. On the flip side of that, there are circumstances where there are complaints that are justified, where there are circumstances where someone has violated the law or shown even intent. And in those cases, the board has an enforcement role consistent with the statutory provisions that you've created for us to enforce the authority. And I'll also just note that during the time I was chair, we had the opportunity to go through rulemaking following the 2023 session, where there were a number of new statutes enacted. That was a really engaging process, talking to those who are regulated by the statute and the board as to what clarity we could bring to certain areas. There were some things where we were successful. There were other things where you might have to change a statute. But in all of those cases, I think people felt like they were heard and they had the opportunity to participate in the process. So grateful for the chance to talk to you today, grateful to be reappointed, and look forward to any questions you have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Asp. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Asp? Okay, very good. I think we'll go online next to Mr. Banaian, if you'd like to unmute yourself and go ahead and give us a few remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I'm honored to be considered for appointment to the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board. I'm a professor of economics and currently serve as director for the Center for Policy Research and Community Engagement at St. Cloud State University. In this role, I work at the intersection of applied policy research and the university's broader responsibility to engage and support the communities we serve. Our center partners with local governments and organizations throughout the region, providing analysis that helps inform public decisions and strengthens the connection between the university and central Minnesota. As you've heard earlier in my career, I had the privilege of serving in the Minnesota House of Representatives. During that time, I came to value deeply the bipartisan commitment many of us shared to practical problem solving and good governance, some of which I've heard in your conversations today. That legislative experience provided me with a firsthand understanding of how campaign finance laws affect candidates, organizations, and the public's trust in our democratic institutions. My academic work also intersects directly with the mission of the board. In 1990, I co-authored a peer-reviewed paper published in Economic Inquiry examining campaign spending and electoral outcomes. That research helped shape my long-standing interest in transparency, fairness, and the incentives that shape political behavior. Those issues are foundational to the work of this board, and they remain relevant today. What I hope to bring to the board is a combination of legislative experience, analytical expertise, and a strong commitment to integrity and public service. I understand the importance of ensuring that Minnesota's campaign finance system is fair, transparent, and accessible, and I view the board's role as essential to maintaining public confidence across the political spectrum. If confirmed, I intend to carry out those responsibilities with impartiality, respect for the statutory framework, and a commitment to serving the people of Minnesota. I want to thank Governor Walz for appointing me to this board. I also thank Executive Director Sigurdson and the board staff for their patience and guidance in bringing me up to speed on their important work. He was right in what he said at the beginning. There's a lot there. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Banaian. Any questions for Mr. Banaian? All right, thank you so much. And last but not least, Mr. Spevacek, if you'd like to give us a few words. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm humbled to be able to appear before this committee and also humbled by the opportunity to serve our state by serving on this board, and I hope to have that opportunity. A little bit about myself. I moved to Minnesota 46 years ago upon graduation from law school. Grew up in Indiana. I've been in the same firm for the last 46 years. I'm a litigator handling civil cases principally involving the insurance industry. My practice is national. I handle cases from coast to coast and border to border. I've gotten myself involved in politics since I've become a resident of Minnesota, as indicated principally on the Republican side and principally as a member of the donor and fundraising class. I have a great interest in politics in the state. I do need to say that this is a position that I did not seek out. I was sitting at my desk one day when Greta Johnson called me and said that my name had gotten the attention of the governor as someone who might be a good person to fill the position on this board. And of course, I was incredibly humbled as a skinny kid growing up in nowhere, Indiana, to have the governor of one of the great states in the union think that I might be able to be of service to his administration of this state was extremely humbling. I didn't immediately jump on the opportunity, though I wanted to do my research as to what was being asked of me. And that research took me to the mission statement of the board, and I was particularly struck by the opening phrase of the first statement in that mission statement, to promote public confidence in state government decision-making. I think public confidence is incredibly important, And when I read that, I thought that I could possibly be of service to the state by helping make things transparent and to let the citizens of the state understand that there are rules that need to be followed, and we expect everyone to abide by the same rules. So Minnesota has been very good to me in terms of providing me with opportunities that I could have never imagined when I was a kid growing up in Kokomo, Indiana. And this call from the governor gives me an opportunity, I believe, to give back to a state that's given so much to me. So I very much welcome your endorsement. I hope that I get it, and I hope I have an opportunity to serve admirably. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Spevacek. Any questions for Mr. Spevacek? Excuse me, for Mr. Spevacek? Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Banaian, I see that you're replacing George Sewell.
Yes.
George has been a friend of mine for many years, and you have some very big shoes to fill. So
I agree with that. George and I had cases together over the years, and he was someone that I learned quite a bit as a young lawyer having cases with George. But George is also a friend of mine, and I've known George for 30 plus years now.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Senator Carlson. Any other questions or comments? Senator Cwodzinski.
I just want to thank the three of you for your willingness to step up and serve the people and the sacrifices that you maybe need to make, and that the compensation monetarily probably isn't quite what you would maybe hope for. And so with that said, thank you for not letting that get in the way of wanting to help all of us do the right thing.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask Senator Cwodzinski, does this mean you're going to support Republicans?
Hey, let's take a vote and find out, shall we? So we have two options. I'm going to suggest an option unless somebody wants to do this differently. My suggestion is that we take the appointments as a group and vote on them as a group. Are we all on board with that? Great, then that's what we're going to do. So I think Senator Cran would like to move the appointments of David Asp, Representative King Banaian, and Chuck Spevacek to the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board and be recommended for confirmation. Is that your motion, Senator?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right. The motion is adopted unanimously, and David Asp, Representative King Banaian, and Mr. Chuck Spevacek are recommended for confirmation to the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board. There you go. All right, we have concluded our business. We are concluded 20 minutes early. I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for the discussion today. And I just want to take a moment to note also that I sat next to Senator Anderson in this committee for 3 years on this end of the table. And I know that today we've spent some time remembering and honoring Senator Anderson, and I was very sad to hear of his passing. And so I enjoyed sitting next to him. He was such a gentleman, and he was so kind. And so he will be missed. And I just wanted to end on that note. And with that, we are adjourned.